Thanks for staying with us here on the Pulse. If you just tuned in, by the way, we took you to Parliament because a key thing happened in Parliament today. The Speaker of Parliament instructed the Clerk of Parliament to ensure that they provide the police all the necessary information when it comes to the investigation into the alleged involvement of some members of Parliament in the scuffle that happened in Esutifi in Shidiam. Now, one of the key concerns that have been raised by the Speaker of Parliament is that he will not shield any member of Parliament, and that's the conversation we're having here on the Pulse. Now, if you just tune in, it's imperative you know that the Speaker of Parliament took his stand as well as the minority and the majority leader. But still on illegal mining, the Public Accounts Committee was sitting today, and a probe into mining licensing regime under the current John Mahama government resulted in a clash between the ranking member and vice chairman of the Public Accounts Committee. The spectacle unfolded when the vice chairman of the committee, Davis Opoku-Ansah, posed a public interest question to the Deputy Lands Minister, Yusuf Sulemana, about the state of previous small-scale licenses issued under the previous government, and really how many have been issued in the last 11 months. We'll hear how it all went down between the vice chairman and his ranking shortly. But first, let's listen to the Deputy Lands Minister's own explanation on the investigative outcome of over 900 licenses issued under the MPP administration.
People had concessions when they didn't need it. There's evidence where some people have concessions that they didn't need it. They didn't even know where the land is. And so we have reviewed the small-scale licenses, like I said earlier on, about 1,200, close to 1,300 licenses were reviewed. And when we reviewed them, about 907 irregularities or infractions were identified. We further checked and realized that some were administrative in nature. And so those that were administrative in nature, we asked Minerals Commission to resolve them themselves, which they did. We found out that even in so many cases where the officers had said that don't go ahead, these are the reasons why I'm asking you not to go ahead, some officers went ahead and approved and gave out those concessions. We have revoked them, and we challenge them to take us to court. Again, there were instances where a concession is so close to a community. Indeed, if you were to mine, you end up mining within the houses of the people. And so the officers professionally recommended that do not give out these concessions. They were given. And so we have revoked them. In other instances, there's a high tension line running through the concession, and the officer will say that do not approve. These were approved. We have revoked them. There were instances where the chiefs will sit in their palaces, and then somebody will walk to them and on their face will just fly a certificate. I've received a letter from Minerals Commission to come and mine, when the owners of the land were not consulted. And that's not what the law says. The law says that you must involve them, you must consult them. Now we have received quite a number of petitions from chiefs when we took over, and so those were also investigated, and they were part of those that we revoked.
Yusuf Sulemana there, but let me take you now to the Public Accounts Committee seating. My colleague James Aveji has been there for us all morning. He joins us live with more. James, and really, what exactly was the Deputy Chairman trying to find out after this explanation? James, you have to unmute for me to hear you clearly.
I hope you can hear me now. I was saying that you heard the Deputy Lands Minister talk about the number of licenses they had to review when they came into office. Over 1,000 of them, scaled down to over 700 of them, which they realized had some level of infractions. And so after that response, the Deputy Chairman of the committee, Davis Opoku-Ansah, tried to find out if these are the 900 licenses you say have infractions, how many have you revoked so far? and what has been the specific issues about them. Then the minister answered, giving out the figure, but as usual, the politics of the issue came in, where he threw some jab at the previous government, labeling what they had inherited as a rot, which they needed to clean up in order to set the right footing for the current government and the ministry in terms of licensing of small-scale enterprises.
As a ministry, Minerals Commission, EPA, publish for the consumption of this country mining firms whose licenses have been revoked. We need to know. We want that publication done.
I think last week, those that we revoked, if you check in the dailies, I'm not very sure, but on our website and on other platforms, we publish all of them, 278 of them. I can send a soft copy of those ones to you so that you can share to your other friends, so that you go far. And I'm saying that sooner or later, large-scale companies, those who have gone to take lands, they've gotten the, what is it called, licenses, and they're now going around, running around to get people to come and invest. When people are holding resources and they want to go and do business, they're not getting space. We'll revoke them.
Thank you very much for publishing the over 270-something revoked licenses. But how many have you granted in the last 8 months?
Yeah, so when you inherit a rot system like this, you don't rush to do, to repeat the same wrongdoings. So what we are saying is that between 2017 to 2024, we relaxed in ensuring that our laws work. And so what you need to do is to clean the house first. And that's the house cleaning we are doing.
Well, house cleaning, he says. James is still with me, and I also have Davis Opoku join the conversation here, but I'll come back to him. Let me go to James now. I'm wondering how this really degenerated into a clash between the deputy chairman and his ranking.
Well, firstly, so realizing that the minister has been evasive in providing a specific figure on how many licenses this government has issued in the last 11 months, the deputy chairman pushed a bit more further, especially when the deputy lands minister introduced some level of politics into the matter. It led to a back and forth between the two of them. And then the ranking member on the committee, Samuel Atamels, tried to interject into the matter, and he insisted that the minister's request for 24 hours to provide that information to the committee should be enough to answer the question, and that he should be allowed to moderate the proceedings. And at that point, he started shouting on top of his voice in getting that message across, Posty.
Thank you, James. Let's listen to that.
0, 10, 20, 100. We want to know.
So when it comes to small-scale licenses, I cannot, as I sit here, give you any figure. I cannot give you any figure. Chairman, I just conferred with my CEO and our, we swore an oath, right? And we are serious and patriotic citizens sitting here. We will not want to give you any information that will contradict what we have in our data. And so if you want us to give you accurate information, give us by close of day. We will print it out and come and give it to you today. But we don't have it here and we're not guests. Okay, but just to put it on record.
Yes.
I told my acting CEO that we should not conjecture any figure. You know why? after the December general election. We are asking about the number of licenses that we have given in this year. Is that not the case? After the elections. Immediately after the elections. Just 4 days for the new president, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, to be sworn in, 55 licenses were signed. So if we are talking about new ones that were signed, we can begin from there. That at least 55 were signed. We'll go and add whatever that we have added and bring it to you.
Minister, the interesting thing is that you remember the licenses that were issued 4 days to the expiration of the previous government.
Yes, in a row.
But you don't remember the number of licenses you have issued.
You are pushing me. You push me.
I never pushed you.
To tell you what
I'm here
I do.
to ask the questions. That is my role as a member of parliament,
yes,
and also the vice chair on this committee.
Yeah, so the 55.
Honorable member,
the 55,
if I'm going to be the chairman of this place, let me be the chairman. The minister said we need to give him up to this evening, right? He will get us the numbers. What is the big deal about it?
Nobody has disputed.
Don't let us play politics with it.
I have not disputed that.
The chance to bring the numbers, and then we can play with it. Let's move on. The next one is by Honorable Frank Yeboah.
Well, our research team has been digging into the numbers just to get that exact number of mining licenses or mining-related licenses issued since the beginning of the year. And lead data analyst Isaac Ofeje joins us in the studio. Well, the minister doesn't seem to know, but we've been doing our checks. And we know, right?
Well, maybe he knows, but he says he doesn't want to put the wrong figure out.
Oh, okay.
But we also have access to the mining repository, so we have access to that data, and we've been compiling. So definitely we know what that number is. But it's good to start from the beginning of the year. How many licenses have been issued since the start of January this year till now? And per our checks, we were able to count 492 mining-related licenses issued since the beginning of the year. Let's break this down. If you look at this 492, 411 of them were, supporting services. 57 licenses have actually been issued for small-scale mining. You have 16 prospecting licenses and 5 for restricted mining lease. And then you also have 3 mining lease. With this mining lease, it simply means that they can actually do almost everything. And in fact, it's good to break down. I mean, this is the number that, I don't know, but it looked as if, well, per the commentary that was run, it looked as if the minister didn't want to put this figure out. But per what we have checked so far, since the commencement of the second stanza of Mahama's administration, in fact, 35 mining-related licenses have actually been issued under the current administration. And remember the big number, 493, I spoke about. Although 35 of that is what has been issued under this current administration, it is interesting that from 1st January to before 7th January, 457 mining-related licenses were actually issued by the former administration led by President Akufo-Addo, former President Akufo-Addo, before he left office. 457 mining-related licenses. But of course, it is also important to put out that since the start of Mahama's second tenure, about 35 mining-related licenses have been been issued.
Thank you so much, Kofi. And you'll still be with us because we'll go into the issues that came up in Parliament and the alleged role that members of Parliament played in the scuffle that occurred in Isitufi. And with specific reference to the allegations that the police is making, preliminary reports, they tell us, points to the fact that the member of Parliament for the area incited the mob to actually attack 9 Months officials. But then we've also been hearing from the member of Parliament for the area who has been disputing these claims. We'll get into our JOY research and our findings as to what exactly is happening in that constituency. But let me bring in the Deputy Chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, Davis Opoku Ansah. We appreciate your time here on the Pulse. Clearly, we're not happy with the minister's line of answering. And so I'm wondering why exactly.
Well, I think, first of all, I had no issues with how the minister sought to answer his questions. My duty on the committee is to probe the questions, is to ask the big questions and ensure that we get answers to it and find ways of blocking any loop. Ensuring that we amend the laws if we have to, or instruct or order for the executive to do what they ought to do so that we are able to stop mining. So I have a responsibility, and interestingly, he sought to do a bit of politics with the issues that were raised, but that is not our focus. Ours is to look at how many of the licenses that have been issued, what measures have been put in place to ensure that these licenses don't end up doing illegal things that end up being galamsey. And that is the concern for us.
But Yusuf raised some key concerns as well. Not to cut you, though, but Yusuf raised some key concerns that under the previous administration, for example, he says mining licenses were issued to individuals who had concessions along high-tension poles, and clearly they had reports stating that they ought not to be issued the mining licenses, but they were issued those mining licenses, and so they had to do a lot of revocation of some of these licenses, which he puts the numbers over 200. As previous administrators of the economy, I'm sure that is of concern to you, is it not?
It's of great concern to me. In my constituency, I've had illegal miners, enter my constituency, and I've sought to engage in all forms of mining. And it's something that the community itself and my good self are not happy with, and we continue to make noise about it. I'm not here to be covering up for any wrongs of any previous administration. I'm here as the Vice Chairman of Public Accounts to see to it that the recommendations that the Auditor General brought forth are implemented by the executive. And of course, Ghanaians went to the polls, voted for John Mahama, and are expecting that John Mahama and his ministers do what is right. And by doing what is right, it means that, correcting the wrongs of the previous administration. And that is all I sought to do. I'm not there to protect what somebody did in the past and how somebody dealt with issues and all of that. But you realize that there was a systemic challenge. One, there was not some collaboration between the EPA and the Minerals Commission, and even the Minerals Commission sitting in Accra, and that at the district level. So you'll be there. Somebody now brings a license and says that this is a mining license that I got from Minerals Commission, and that I'm allowed to enter into the forest and mine. When there are no traces of letters that is coming to the assembly, there are no traces of letters that MPs are able to see and verify and say that, yes, indeed, what they are saying is right or wrong. You understand?
And then what really was the recommendation of the Auditor General when it comes to the issuing of mining licenses?
Well, you see, the issues of mining cannot be stopped. What we ought to do is to ensure that people engage in responsible mining. And if you look at the figures that your colleague just brought, even if it's 5, some mining licenses have been issued. This 35 or so mining licenses that have been issued, we have to ensure that they follow the environmental laws in protecting the environment. We ought to ensure that they are able to come back to these destroyed lands and reclaim those lands. Those are the concerns, that people are not mining along river bodies, that people are not mining under high tensions, that people are not destroying people's farms, that the communities are involved in decision making when it comes to mining. That for me is my concern.
And then the committee today decided to give Yusuf Suleiman 24 hours to present before the committee that decisive number you were looking for when he appeared before the committee. What are your expectations within the next 24 hours?
Well, I'm not too sure we gave him that command. He said he made an assurance that he will provide the committee with that information in 24 hours. And we are hoping that he brings that information. For us, it's just to know that, yes, this government has issued some licenses And these are the modalities that have been put in place that will ensure that we do not go back to the systemic rot that we have seen, especially in the issuance of mining license and illegal miners' activities across the country. I mean, we all want to end Galamsey, whether blue or red, we want to end Galamsey. It is the how, and that is why we all want to contribute and ensure that government does what is right.
And there was this tense moment, really, between you and the ranking on the committee. Have you talked after the incident, really?
No, we spoke immediately after the incident. I think that that's how we work. I mean, he has a responsibility as a chair to moderate the session. I also have a responsibility to ask the tough questions. And sometimes it gets heated and all of that. But I mean, it's all for the betterment of the country and also to ensure that the proper things are done.
Thank you so much, Davis Opokwansa, for your time here on The Pulse. Well, the Member of Parliament for Esutifie North, Ebenezer Kweko-Addo, has been invited to the police headquarters, we're told, here in Accra, as investigators probe his alleged role in the attack on the National Anti-Illegal Mining Task Force. The Member of Parliament is alleged to have instigated the attack following the refusal of NIMO's team to release illegal miners arrested for using various chemicals that they term as dangerous close to a major road. Well, the MP denies these accusations based on the statement they put out yesterday, and his lawyer, Kwesi Gyamfi-Buedu, has also been speaking to our sister station, Adum FM, and he says though they have not received any official invite, the visit to the CID office is in response to a directive by the Inspector General of Police.
IGP invite officially Honorable Ensa Enkaye. Nemum seniye ye beto yinti. Yehu social media so se enkrata sa akuri pe no. Ya yenso esiji na yese seniye ebeboa ama astem no. Makwe wo mu bia bede dinti no. Ya dwen se yebekọ ho eye enura no. Nemum yentumi anko efise na yese ade asakakra. Na ehume yese yebeba no pe eboaboa ye ho. Ne yakwa akọhwe ne etie kwan a ensem no efa so.
Well, preliminary police findings indicate that the team had arrested several suspects and seized items including a Smith & Wesson pistol, ammunition, 2 pistol magazines, an unregistered Range Rover, an unregistered Toyota RAV4, and several mobile phones, according to the police. Well, Dr. Addo allegedly arrived at the same scene with a group of people demanding the release of the detainees, an allegation the MP, we told you, has strongly denied. Well, my colleague Erastus Asare-Donko has also been digging into what happened that day. He has details of what exactly transpired on that fateful day.
Well, so what we know is that the NIMO's arrest at that particular scene would have been without any drama, any chaos, if the MP had not gone there with over 20 heavily built men. Because when they went there, NIMO's had already arrested the people, put them in handcuffs. They were on their way to put them in police custody at Fidim. That was the plan. Until the MP showed up at the scene with over 20 men and asked them to release them. So it was the back and forth that started the agitation at the site before NIMO's personnel decided to which them away to the nearest police station. The MP and his boys also followed them to the police station. And there again, when you speak with the police, they will tell you that the MP still requested that the people be released. And those demands are what emboldened more people to storm the place and demand that the people be released before they leave. And finally, they got them released before the MP left the police station. And so it will be inaccurate for the MP to say that He was passing by for a funeral, and then he heard the commotion and he went to the site. There was no commotion before he and his boys went to the site. It was just NIMOS and their personnel conducting their normal duties as they do. And there will have been no chaos if he had not gone there to intervene.
Francis Asare Donko speaking to my colleague Mamiesi earlier on Newsdesk. Well, Kofi is still with me in the studio. We're just looking at some of the key findings. You've been doing a search in that area, Shidiam to be precise. Just look at the extent of illegal mining in the area. What have you found?
In fact, Shidiam has been in the news for quite some time, and we need to put this in proper context. So what we decided to do is to look at the area itself and see why maybe illegal mining is rampant there. So what we saw was that this Shidiam that we are talking about, there is a key hotspot. A hotspot between Kenya, which is also a mining, community, and Shidiam. And this hotspot you see on your screens, in fact, the total area of that hotspot you see is about 293 acres of land currently destroyed by illegal, miners. If you really want to bring this home, this is the size of about 222 football fields combined, destroyed by illegal miners. And if you can see, what you see is that this, hotspot, Galamsey hotspot, is between Kenya, and Shidiam. But it's also not so far from, Newmont's mining site, which is in Kenya, is about 3.6 kilometers away from Newmont, just about 900 meters away from Shidiam, and about 1 kilometer away from Kenya. So this will tell you why Shidiam or the Esutifi North is actually in the news, and why, in terms of the background and the context, this in terms of Shidiam is gradually becoming a Galamsey hotspot. And just like we put it out there, that the total area, in terms of our estimation, about 293 acres of land, which is currently destroyed by illegal miners. And if you really want to understand this, that's about 222 football fields combined. So you can see it there, that hotspot between Kenya and Shidiam, but it's much closer to Shidiam than Kenya, and this is not really far from the town, and that's the magnitude of devastation. 293 acres of lands, destroyed.
Shocking, isn't it? Well, thank you so much, Kofi, for that update. Well, there has been calls from civil society groups for the arrest and suspension of the Member of Parliament as a result of the incident that happened in Shidiam. Awala Sewa is co-coordinator of Eco-Conscious Citizens. She's one of the groups, one of the leaders of the group, I beg your pardon, that is pushing for the members of parliament cited in this case to be suspended from parliament.
The purpose of investigations is always to ascertain the veracity of the information that has been given. And it just shows the dire situation we find ourselves in, where NIMOS can be attacked by persons who should know better. But yes, everybody is innocent until proven guilty, and we look to finding out what actually happened. But I'm sort of disappointed that as at now, the MPs have not yet been suspended. And we are very concerned about what appears to be selective justice.
Awala Sewa there. But away from illegal mining, government is intensifying efforts to reduce lead poisoning and exposure in Ghanaian communities, following growing concerns about its impact on public health. The Ministry of Health, in collaboration with Pure Earth and World Health Organization and other partners, they have begun joint monitoring and cleanup exercise in identified hotspots, including industrial and informal recycling areas. According to the United Nations Children's Fund, the situation has reached alarming levels, really, with 1 in every children found to have high levels of lead in their blood. Research conducted in the Greater Accra, Ashanti and Northern regions link the contamination largely to food and environmental pollution. Regional Programs Director of Pure Earth, Reverend Dr. Esmond Wisdom Kwanzaa said public education and awareness are crucial to curbing the menace.
It's a public health concern. Destroying communities, destroying homes. And so it's an urgent need for action to be able to tackle the emerging concerns of lead poisoning in low and middle income countries like Ghana. I think the balance, where we strike the balance is awareness. Most of them do not know. Look, we had this horrific stories in the northern region, for example, where we heard stories of how when they apply these eyeliners to the newborns, they become teary for days. And so when our study revealed higher concentrations of lead in the eyeliner, they became alarmed. They never knew. This is something they grew to meet. They grew up to meet, they use it on themselves and the kids, right? So it's about awareness, and that's why gathering evidence to understand the sources is very, very important to the work we are doing. If you don't understand the sources, you cannot educate, you cannot design interventions to address them. And this is why we are collaborating with Ghana Health Service to undertake the randomized control trial to actually see the contribution of these eyeliners to the blood lead level, which will inform policy and then program interventions to address these issues.
Well, let's explore this further here on the poll. Join me now on Zoom is Roderick Kwabna Ajay. He's Deputy Chief Executive Officer of the Food and Drugs Authority in charge of food, and also the Programs Director of Pure Earth, Reverend Dr. Esmond Wisdom Kwanzaa. And in the studio is Reverend Dr. Emmanuel Tremanting Amwa. He's health specialist at UNICEF Ghana. I appreciate your time, gentlemen, and I'll be coming to you on Zoom shortly, but let me start in the studio. Rev, I'm sure UNICEF, you've been doing some research on lead poisoning. What's the extent when it comes to Ghana, specifically the Greater Accra region?
Thank you very much. So yes, about 2 or 3 years ago, UNICEF and other partners teamed up to assess the level of blood levels of lead in children. The country was zoned into 3 parts: the southern sector, middle, and the northern part. And out of about 3,225 children examined, 1 out of every 2 child had levels that were very high, above what the WHO stipulates that should be the barest minimum. So we're having children having levels from even 5 to, I say, about 40 plus levels. And research is still ongoing, but some of the contributory factors that we found down here in the Greater Accra region was around where they do recycling of old car batteries, so where they break it down and smelt it, and those who lived a bit around there were levels that were high. But there were other surprising things that came up, areas that we're not expecting to have found high levels. We realized that children there were having high levels around the northern part of the country. So that began further investigations as to what could be in our environment that might be poisoning our children.
But what's the situation in the north?
So in the northern sector, we did find also quite some alarming levels, but surprisingly, places where we thought we wouldn't have found much because there were less industrial activities, rather gave up high levels, and that triggered the interest that could it be some of the things we are using generally around the household? Could it be certain practices that we are doing that is causing these levels to go up? So yes, the levels in the northern part was quite high from the kids that we sampled, and also Greater Accra region, and yeah.
And that's quite worrying, really. Have your investigations or research so far identified the source of this high contamination?
So that is a collaborative effort. Pure did some work where they sampled the eyeliners, some of the eyeliners, during as part of the study that I just mentioned. And the few that they sampled, they realized that the lead levels were very, very high, some 90+%.
Eyeliners?
Yes. So these are the traditional kaji or the koli or the shilo. Some of them are made from rock or that they grind and put in receptacles that they apply. So that we know is one of the high environmental sources of this lead. And based on what Pure did, the few samples that they took, this year the UNICEF and FDA partnered to even do a wider study, building on what other partners have found. And now the results are out, and unequivocally we know that out of all the eyeliner samples that were done across the country, so in all 16 regions, close to 80%, 77.8% of all of them have unacceptable high levels of lead.
Even the imported ones?
Even the imported ones. There were only few,
That's
just
shocking.
about 20 plus, and I'm sure when FDA Deputy Director comes on, he would even give more statistics to that. So yes, some of the imported ones.
So this is a good time to bring in, so hold that thought. Let me bring in the FDA just to expatiate on this research work done. This is quite shocking. We're hearing high level of leads in eyeliners. I'm worried because as a woman, I use eyeliners every now and then. That's my major concern, really. Tell us more about this research. Mr. Roderick, you have to unmute for me to hear you clearly.
Yes, I said I love the way your voice went, the pitch that it took, because I was actually trying to see beyond your glasses to see whether you were applying it.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, we're in a crisis situation right now. Tell me more about these findings.
Exactly, and then as a country, we have to get our priorities, really put together. And so this day, as we are, Pure Earth is put us together. It's great for us to rethink some of these things, but these are some of the suspicions we've had over time. Look, as a country, we have to get our act together. The issue of pollution. Today we are talking about lead, but the work that we did also involved cadmium. And then, we even had some of our machines failing because we wanted to add arsenic. Arsenic goes with rice. And so it's out there, and it's like a system that has gone out of control, really, if you look at everything that is happening. The lawlessness, the way people do things, in terms of equipment that people use in manufacturing, it's all coming to play out right in front of us. And this is where we have to put our foot down, and then everybody needs to be scientific. The sensitization is to get every...
Just before we get into the solutions, really, I'm quite concerned about the research findings. And you can sense my concern because I use eyeliners every day by virtue of my work. And so based on your findings, what's the level of lead poisoning in some of these eyeliners? And what's the percentage, really?
Yeah, so if you look at the result that we had for lead, then region by region, it talks about a number that failed. So if you are looking at 100 cases and you say 64 failed, for example, in Ashanti region for lead, that is for coal. If you say Bono, that was 16, let's say, out of what we had. Some were that, take, for example, Greater Accra. I think that's where your concern is.
Exactly.
So we had that. Yes, we had that failure rate, 72%.
72% of items sampled.
Items sampled.
What's the sample size, just to be sure?
Oh, we were very, in terms of that, using certain scientific methods. I forgot. I think Yasmin's method, where we picked according to that sampling size. There's a formula that we use. So out of it, then you spread it over the whole area, and that's what we got. So this results will stand anywhere in the world, as we have statistically properly picked, and then this is what we got. And so you cannot just overlook it. It just shows a system that is going out of control, a system that, I mean, things are not working the way it should go.
But
And
as the
that is why
FDA, I'm sure you'll be looking into this, because I'm sure you have brands you may have spotted during the research. I'm sure you'll be going after them to clamp down on this. Is that the case?
Okay, so here comes the next shocker. Many people are thinking like a brand. If it was that, there were some were brands, but some of these, that we have picked, some are what occurs here, and then also coming from outside. So those that are brands, we already have taken some steps towards that. That's easy to identify. But what about what is happening here? It's also what you cannot just push away. And that's why we're saying a system that is gone out of control. When people are lawless and will not stick to good manufacturing practices, people will just go polluting the system. I mean, can you just imagine in the world as we are now, if Ghana is got about the greatest e-waste, place here on Earth, Mother Earth, then it should just show you how lawless, how we have just thrown caution to wind. Abogloshi is a place that you need to be very, very careful, about. When you are looking at that design, do you have that design at home?
I do.
Well, very good. And so that's the question we're asking everybody. Those who have that design, which have been made out of lead, that means that the car batteries, those ones that they are melting and adding, because it's able to acquire a certain temperature that helps them mold it quickly. I mean, you can imagine what the trouble is. You can imagine how many people. So really, the picking of the coal, the Tom Brown that we picked, was just supposed to be representative. The things that we everyday use. What about if we just dropped it and wanted to pick cassava? I wanted to pick yam. What do you think we'll see? We have a system that has got a problem, and we all have to now think scientific, and then, let's not throw our hands up in the air. And that's what Pure Earth, that's what Food and Drugs Authority, that's what UNICEF, that's what WHO, that's why we've met today with the Ministry of Health. And that's the forum that we had today. That let's not throw up our hands in the air. What can we do about it? We are talking about having what we call a supplier's quality assurance program. So if you have people who are supplying you raw materials, there needs to be certain requirements that they should meet. So for example, you cannot use a bad raw material to do a good product. So if you are going to manufacture coal, the idea is that whoever is supplying you, you should be requiring from that person at least evidence that it does not contain heavy metal and all that. And the FDA is ready to assist the industries to put such programs in place.
And I'm really worried about the situation, really, because as a consumer, I'm the end user of the product. Should FDA fail in ensuring that the manufacturers use the right materials, my health is at risk. And so I'm quite interested in enforcement. We may have a very nice plan on paper, but how do you plan to enforce it?
Thank you. So with the issue of enforcement, our suspicions, we've had our suspicions for a long time. So for example, if you come in the area of sachet water, I mean, concerning the standard for heavy metals, we have already even sent to GSA, Ghana Standards Authority, because they come up with the standards, where we saw cadmium, which is also another heavy metal. We saw that, and it's not in the standard. So we drew the attention to it for them to have that added. All the same, those who are coming to register their water products, so the sachet, the bottled, we ensure that the product does not contain that. Number two, take for example, cocoa products. Anybody who also is bringing in or manufacturing cocoa products, because, some of the waters with the galamsey, for example, that may be going on, it may be going into our food. I think you've heard of some data that some research has brought out, say contomere and the rest has got it. It's more or less like you are using bad water or polluted water to irrigate your product. You will not be able to tell which contomere it is. And is it because you are worried about kotomire because you had kotomire? What about the cocoa yam? What about the yam? So that is what we are really facing. This is something that nobody can escape. That's why we say food safety is everybody's business. The good thing is that now we are conscious of some of these things, and we need to start putting in the right processes to minimize and then correct the system. Let's not throw up our hands in the air. We now need to look more at science. And that's why this year, for the World Food Safety Day, the title was, the theme that was used was Science in Action. We need to practice the science we are talking about. We need to ensure that places like Agbogbloshie that are heavily contaminated, we make sure that those activities stop there. And we need to get those who are fabricating, for example, the Nika machine that you may see in the market. Don't you see that they paint inside blue? Don't you know that some of the paint contain lead? So if you paint inside blue, the hopper where you pour your grains, after a while, don't you realize that the paint seems to sort of go away? Where is it? It's in your banku. It's in your cocoa. So these are all things that we need to now, as a people, to be playing with the science. FDA cannot be at every place. Standards Authority cannot be at every place. We need to rather have a scientific awakening, and as a people, put into practice what we have learned from in school. So
stay with me, Mr. Roderick. I'll come back because this is something we're going to be dealing with extensively here on the Pulse. Let me bring in the Regional Programs Director of Pure Earth, Reverend Dr. Esmond Wisdom Kwanzaa. We appreciate your time here on the Pulse. We've just been hearing from UNICEF. Tell us about the research that Pure Earth has done, especially in the northern region, showing that children are exposed to high levels of lead. What is, based on your research, influencing this?
Yeah, thank you very much for having us on your show. And this is a very important topic. I must indicate that Pure Earth, in collaboration with Ministry of Health, FDA, UNICEF, we are commemorating International Lead Poisoning Prevention Week with the theme No Safe Level, Act Now to End Lead Exposure. Even the smallest amount of lead in your system can cause tremendous health impact. Now, Pure Earth has been collaborating with the government agencies in undertaking environmental assessment to understand the sources of exposure. Pure Earth follows a 5-phase approach of addressing and tackling the issues around lead poisoning. The first thing is blood lead level surveillance, which we partnered UNICEF and Ghana Health Service to undertake in 3 ecological zones. The second step is to understand what are the sources contributing to this blood lead levels. And then the third option is to design interventions to address them and then come up with communications. And finally, strengthen government institutions to deal with this. So our work has shown that a lot of children in Ghana, the Middle Belt, the Greater Accra, and the Northern Belt have higher lead levels. This is really, really concerning. This has actually confirmed the global threshold of about 815 million children globally are lead poisoned. 1 in 3 children. When you come to the low middle income countries like Ghana, we're talking about 1 in 2 children. So the work we have done with UNICEF confirmed this. 53.5% of the children living in these 3 ecological zones have higher blood lead levels. Our work also followed by identifying what are the sources contributing to this. We've discovered the used lead acid battery recycling, especially in the informal sector, contributing significantly to the pollution in the soil, in the air. And once the children or people come in contact with this, they are lead poisoned. We've also discovered our local data design, which FDA has also confirmed right now, and is linking that to cancer and kidney diseases as one of the most exposure pathways in Ghana, and the scientific studies have shown that it can leach into the food we eat. So this is really concerning. And then also the other one, Dr. Chinamanten in your studio just mentioned, the Chilo, the eyeliners, unbelievable. Some of them have higher lead concentration as much as 1 million part per million. That is completely lead. And so I was particularly very happy when UNICEF decided to do a lot more work on this with FDA to understand the regional variations as far as this is concerned. We have also done another study which involved rapid market screening. So what we do was to purchase products from the markets and also assess them. And we discovered that the locally fabricated cookware, 55% of the cookwares that we purchased from the Greater Accra market, Eastern region, and the Western and Ashanti region have higher lead concentrations. Ceramics, toys, you can name them. A lot of the everyday consumer products are all heavily lead contaminated. So clearly there are two pathways, the environmental pathways and also the consumer pathways. But something is being done about it. And this is why we are very happy to keep raising awareness, using the occasion of International Lead Poisoning Prevention Week to talk more about this. So Pure Earth has been collaborating with the government agencies, especially EPA and Ghana Standards Authority, to undertake what we call production mapping of the lead, what we call it, the data design in the 5 northern region and Greater Accra, to document their processes and also to help them improve on their processes. Some are deliberately adding lead. Some are also just using raw materials that are already lead contaminated to manufacture this. So that project is currently ongoing. And aside this project, we are also working with Ghana Standards Authority to establish standards for the cookware. Would you imagine that, almost 90% of Ghanaians, we use this cookware, but they are not standards for this locally fabricated cookware. So we are working with them to come up with standards, and that will be the first step in regulating the locally fabricated or locally fabricated cookwares market across the country.
And then what is the timeline you're giving yourself to make this happen, really? Because as a consumer, I'm worried.
So we are hoping, work is currently ongoing, we are hoping by the second quarter of next year, the standards would be ready. And then, of course, a team of experts, including Doug from FDA, would sit around them to deliberate and to adopt. For us, that would be the first step. Okay. The second step will be training and certification of this locally, those who are into the production of the locally fabricated cookware. This is very, very important. Okay. Most of them do not even know the risk of lead. And so that is why the education, awareness, and training is very important. Okay. I'm very happy to also say that through our funders, we've established a national lead technical working group that would be seized with the responsibility to coordinate projects and programs along addressing lead poisoning in Ghana. And we are very excited to continue partnering with the agencies that matter.
Okay.
For this issue to be
thank you
addressed.
so much, Esmond, for that update, because I'm very pleased with that update. Let me come back in the studio. Dr. Emmanuel is still with me. Really, I am lost of words. And it's just showing the extent of lead poisoning and that we are exposed to on a daily basis, even before we get the opportunity to recognize that this is even in existence. How do you propose moving forward we deal with this decisively? Even as consumers, what should I look out for?
Right, so I think that is picking up from what FD and Pure Earth has said, you realize that there are a lot of gaps. And I'm not surprised, because what we are finding in Ghana is I'll say, typical of developing countries, where standards are yet to be fully implemented, where even when there are standards, enforcement, and you rightly mentioned, is a big issue. And so the first is to identify the problem which we have, that our children are not safe, and not only their children, even adults. Adults also do suffer from the effects of lead poisoning, causing hypertension. It's been documented, heart problems, and even kidneys. So adults are not left out. pregnant women would pass it down to the babies. So by the time the baby is born, the baby already has some deformities and has learning impairment and brain problems in terms of cognition and growing. And so for me, I'm happy that we brought this to the table. I'm happy that we have begun identifying some of the sources which are critical. I'm happy that we have brought on board the legally mandated authorities in Ghana, the Ghana standards, the FDA, the EPA. I'm also glad that partners are all rallying together for us to continue to find the sources and develop guidelines. I know that the FDA, through this work, is also developing guidelines for the eyeliners and for the chilo, so that we are not saying people shouldn't use it, but ensure that what you are using is properly certified, is being properly screened to remove the aspects of lead contamination. Then you can use it, because some of them did pass the test anyway. So it's not like an outright ban on that, but then, if it's the traditional ones, which we know is 100%, then we have to let us view of that. Again, most of these are culturally, entrenched, and it's part of people, and so you can't just yank it away. But how can we continue our cultures in safer methods? And I think that's a discussion. So that's where FDA comes in. And so then now we're talking of, now that we know what are the regulations, and then enforcement. But we also know that enforcement agencies cannot be everywhere, every time, all the time. And so then comes the next level where we need to empower consumers and say that, yes, you may have been eating, one of them is the ayelo, you've been eating shiri while you're pregnant, but now we know that consuming ayelo can pass lead on to your unborn baby as a pregnant woman. Now that you know this, you make healthier choices when you go to the market and you want to buy something to offset your nausea.
Okay.
You are going to steer off this. We are talking about that. They're saying some of them, yes, do have the lead. How do I know? You cannot know.
That's
as
the
a
thing.
consumer.
I cannot know.
So we're happy.
Yeah.
The standards are being set. Education is going to go on. Health workers also being empowered, so that at the antenatal clinic, when you go, there's a midwife talking to you about the fact that take care of yourself. Don't expose your children to playing around. Burning waste and things that will give them lead. And then we can empower. We also saw some in turmeric.
Okay.
FDA is now, enforcing so that the turmeric that you buy, you ensure that they have some FDA certification on it before you buy. So it's a collective effort.
Collective effort it is. Thank you so much to our guest, Roderick Kwabena Ajay. He's Deputy Chief Executive Officer of the Food and Drugs Authority in charge of food. I want to wrap up with him because, in fact, you have a lot of work to do moving forward to ensure my safety. In just 30 seconds, give me the assurance that your man is going to ensure my safety. And what timelines do you have to some of the multiple projects you say you're going to implement to ensure that this do not continue?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yes, so number one, then what we are going to do, we are going to work with you.
Okay.
Work with the media, because sensitization is very important. What Doc just spoke about, the issue of guidelines, so that and then sensitize the public about such what to do, as well as also those who fabricate, the do's and don'ts, what they can add and the metals that they cannot add. We also mean to come up with a supplier's quality assurance, which is actually part of what we call GMP, good manufacturing practices. If you are manufacturing, there are certain principles you must follow. You cannot use a bad raw material to do a good product. So they'll have to do the necessary things. If you are picking a raw material to use, you must make sure that it is tested and it is okay for use, as well as then we give training in GMP. Then we are also going to encourage forming of associations, so that the various parties, assuming let's say those who do the Tom Brown, if they are an associate, then they can ask those who they can do what we call self-compliance. That means they themselves make stringent rules for themselves, even tighter than what the FDA will be requiring of them. So these are all things that we have in line to discuss with them.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your time here on The Pulse. Now, it's been quite the conversation. Unfortunately, we have to leave you at this point in time. My name is Faustina Safo, I appreciate your time and your company. For more news, please log on to myjoyonline.com. Have a pleasant day as you enjoy the rest of our programs. Bye.